This week we are at Fox Valley Off-Road to practice the GP course from round 2 of the Fox Valley Off-Road Racing Series. So this is one of the cool things about this park and other open riding parks that have races is you can just come here on any weekend and practice trails that you raced. Now, for Fox Valley, they do take down the arrows, especially in the woods for the race trails or after the races. So you kind of have to know where you're going in order to practice these said race trails. But the GPs usually follow a similar loop. So after you race a few of the GPs, you know what trails to ride and practice. So I'm starting out on the starts here. The starts always follow a similar trail where you start in the open field, and then you come to that downhill, cross the creek, you go on the uphill, and now we are on the actual race loop. So we come on this downhill, and I think this is a similar trail for pretty much every GP also. And then we come out onto the motocross track. So unlike actual GP race, there's open riding for the entire motocross track. So that's why I slowed down there. And if you're going to come to this park to practice the GP trails as well, you have to be aware that there could be oncoming traffic at any time. So especially when you come onto the motocross track here, make sure to take things easy as well as exiting the motocross track. Always double check and make sure there's not a rider coming at you so you can avoid getting hit. So just one precautionary measure that you should keep in the back of your mind when you're actually practicing. Now in the races, there's not open riding obviously, so it's not much of an issue that you have to worry about, but definitely something to keep in mind for open riding. So after we wrap up the first section of the motocross track, during the race what we did was we came to this uphill here, and you can really fly up this thing. I mean, it's easy to lose your momentum, but if you keep your momentum, then you can definitely really maintain good speed. And then we come to this downhill, and this is another fast section. You can really speed down this hill. There's no need to brake at all. And actually, I know a few people that gas it down that hill, and you can get down it no problems. It's a little sketchy the first few times when you're not really braking, but after a while, you kind of get used to it. But definitely a section I want to continue working on and get speed on that downhill. And then we come to this famous uphill. So this was in the last GP, and also round 1, the hare scramble. This was the hill where it was just absolute chaos and riders were everywhere. But it's a little bit drier today, so got up it no problem. And then if we go up the hill, we come back down. And this is another section where we come back out onto the motocross track. So I take a quick break from riding the GP loop because I find the Perkinator. He's out riding today, and I end up riding with him for most of the day, which proved to be very beneficial because he is an A-class rider. So even if he's riding a little bit slower, so I'm able to keep up, just following his lines and seeing his body positioning and all that stuff, it's very beneficial. Just in general, riding with someone faster than you can prove to be a very beneficial thing to do because you can actually pick up on a lot of stuff. So Steven and I are just kind of putzing along here, exploring around the park, and we end up finding some of the trails to the end of the lap from the past hare scramble we had here. So we started riding along these, just again, putzing along, trying to get warmed up for the rest of the day, just because we are early on in the ride here. So we come out onto the motocross track, and this was definitely a good place to follow Steven around and kind of keep pace with him. Now, he's obviously going slower than what he can actually ride, just so I can actually keep up with him. He's more of a motocross rider, even though he wins the overall morning race for hare scrambles all the time, but his roots are more in the motocross field, and he races the Megacross series quite a bit. So this track here is very easy for him, and he has it down, and he can fly through this thing like no other. But again, he's slowing down for me so I can keep pace with him and kind of get a feel for how fast he's going over some of these jumps. But as I've said in a previous episode this year about the motocross track, this track is actually really safe. Every jump you can over jump or under jump, and it's not going to do you too much harm unless you're just really squirrely and all over the place. So after a few laps on the track, Steven offers for me to attempt to ride his four-stroke, which of course I say yes to because this bike is brand new and has all these cool features such as an electric start. And the last time I rode a bike with an electric start was the first year I started racing on a CRF 230F, and that bike didn't even have the option to kickstart it. And his bike is a four-stroke. It's a YZ250F. And the last time I rode a four-stroke, I'll overlay some of the video here, but the last time I rode a four-stroke was 4 years ago, actually, at Memphis, Missouri, when my 2001 YZ250F blew up. So I kind of forgot how to ride these things. So with the four-stroke here, it took me a couple of laps just to get used to how it feels. With my YZ250, there's obviously the power band, but it takes a little bit before you hit the power band. Whereas with this bike, the second you gas it, there's a lot of torque. So it's a completely different feel. And also, the whole time I was riding this thing, I was just thinking, don't fall over, don't crash it, don't break anything, because the last thing you want to do is damage or even crash one of your buddy's bikes. So in that sense, I kind of held back a little bit, but I feel like it would take a couple of rides for me to fully get used to riding a four-stroke again. It's a night and day difference, the two-stroke and four-stroke, just how the bike rides. But with that said, I kind of liked it. I kind of liked the feel of it. However, I'm just a two-stroke guy now. Back in the day when I was racing my 2001 YZ250F, I enjoyed it, but I just lugged that thing way too much. I put a recluse clutch in it, and I just put the thing in third gear for the entire race and never shifted, never did anything with the clutch, and I was lazy when I was riding it. And then I switched to a two-stroke, and now I'm hooked. I really don't think I could ever transition from two-stroke to four-stroke ever again. But with that said, this bike was a lot of fun to ride, and I really appreciate it, Steven, for letting me take a few laps on it. So here for this final part of the video, I'm just going to show me riding a full lap from the course from the last GP that we had here. The beginning of the video I put together about half a lap, but this time we'll show the entire lap, and then I have Steven right behind me and he's following me. He does end up passing me, so we'll see that here in a little bit. But hopefully for any of you interested in practicing GPs, this helps you out. You just will be able to see what the trail looks like, and if you've never raced a GP but want a potential loop to follow, then hopefully this helps you out as well. So again, I talked about the potential dangers here of merging on to the MX track. Again, the people on the MX track have the right of way when you're merging on, so always make sure to look, make sure nobody's coming, double check, triple check, and slowly merge on off to the side just in case. It would suck to have someone come onto the track and get hit and get hurt. Nobody wants that to happen. So I'm putting a disclaimer here, always make sure to double check and make sure nobody is coming. I think I've vented about that long enough in this video, but it's definitely a point to be made. So after riding the MX track for a little bit, I'm feeling pretty good here today. Now, this is a Friday ride. This is the first time I've ridden Fox Valley on a Friday. So usually they groom the track, prep it, water it, and everything. On Fridays, they usually don't do that. I won't say they always don't do that, because Steven said there have been some cases where they come and water the MX track on a Friday afternoon, but today that was not the case. So track wasn't groomed, which is perfect practice, because practicing on the roughest conditions will definitely make you better, and it will make the smoother conditions easier. So we come down on this downhill once again. We've already seen this section before, but again, this is a point where we merge back onto the MX track. So take a look, make sure nobody's coming, and then there's a rider here coming across. He has the right of way, so I let him go, and then we get back on to our loop and onto the trails. So it's definitely good practice getting on the actual track here, but you have to keep in mind other people have the right of way, and you won't be able to just go all out the entire time. There are some cases where you have to slow down. And you can see on that uphill here, so to the actual track itself, Steven went on the inside line on the uphill. I went on the middle line, and there's also an outside line. And Steven just proved his point. He talked to me about it once we got back to our trailer, but that inside line appears to be slightly faster. However, I'm just more comfortable with the middle line. It's really rider preference, which line you go up. I just feel comfortable with the middle line. So on this uphill, I'm more comfortable with this far inside line. Steven takes the middle line, and then there's also an outside line, which is much slower, but Steven's obviously faster with the middle line on this uphill. So point being here, there's a lot of passing lines, especially on the uphills for the races here. There's plenty of passing potential and plenty of different ways to get around people, and obviously a line that might be faster to someone might be slower to another person. So it comes to rider preference, but it is cool to see all the potential passing lines here. So one important thing to note is you're unable to ride in that open field section after the uphill. I think they only have that part in races, and then they just don't allow open riding in it, so it doesn't get torn up for the races. So we just had to try and get creative here and add a little bit extra trail within our loop, which is no problem. The grass track section is easy. It's the trails that are maybe a little bit more difficult. But we quickly come in now on the final part of the loop. I'm looking around here just because I feel a little bit lost, but I'm starting to recognize some of these trails here. And then, yes, we're coming in on the final part of the lap. So after this last section of trail, we come out to where the scoring is, and then this is where we would actually finish up a lap. And then just to complete the loop, we'll go over the first part of the lap here. So we come through scoring, we go on this downhill, and this is definitely one of the faster parts of the track. It's definitely one of the most flowy sections of trail, but we come to this very small uphill here, and then we ride across to I would say it's a small ravine right here, and it's actually really fast. It can get really rutted out. That's the thing that makes that ravine section kind of tricky. But then we come and we finish up the lap. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this ride video at Fox Valley, and I will see you at the Fox Valley GP, which is the next video. Until then, see you later guys.